The WWC, what the world is watching.
Funny story, I uploaded a live video with no audio. It's just me passionately talking to the void, like it was some impromptu TED talk. It was a spontaneous conversation with Deathwolf that I really wanted to share with everybody, and in the excitement, I totally missed that the mic wasn't recording. So, classic rookie move. I own it. Thank you to everyone who sat through the silent film. You're the real ones. I re-edited the hour and a half down to around 20 minutes with me using some of the video and talking through the moments. So I appreciate your patience. I appreciate your sense of humor. Lesson learned: always check the mic. Always. Let's get into it.
600 plus days of last war grinding, battle spawn, lessons learned, strategies mastered. When we talk, you level up. Welcome to the Warzone Wrecking Crew.
So what I'll do is summarize some of the conversation that we had with also some screenshots of the Discord share. So Deathwolf started out in server 81 with LNL, as you know today. Powerful just won a Warzone duel that I was in, and this was pre-Root recruitment. Root was on 69, and so he was on 81. LNL is a main Korean alliance, and early in the beginning stages, they would the alliance that Deathwolf was in was getting burned a lot by LNL. First, 100, 200 days of being in that server. We talked about how that starts out the game and how it's pinned with one another. LNL, burned them, but really the game is set up when you first get dropped into Last War that you don't know anybody. And, there's a lot of animosity that builds because what the game tells you, there is no winter storm and desert storm. There's not a lot of ways to fight. You have versus and kill event, and there's an arena that you can fight, but there's not a ton of ways to fight. So the game plops you in and tells you in order to build, you need resources. And all these other alliances that you're stronger than has resources. So naturally, I need to obtain those resources. I burn them and get resources. That's what happens early in the game. There's nothing about working together. You don't know you're supposed to know everybody, and there's supposed to be harmony in a server in order to fight other servers the best. That's what you end up doing. And then you expect the people that you're burning to come help you defend the server. And then when they don't, because they're angry at you, then they end up burning them more. And this is the normal cycle that we've seen in the past of the server. Hopefully, newer servers learn from the history of our older servers, but this is what occurred. So there's a bad feeling within 81 for the alliance that Deathwolf was in, which at the time was probably the fourth alliance in 81, which took us to around season 1, where animosity ramped up and continued. LNL took the majority of the map, and there wasn't a lot of room for the smaller alliances, so they were phased out, and they didn't want to play in there. He also noted that there were a lot of people that were quitting within his alliance that he knew. He was R4 and eventually R5 of that alliance and stuck it through. He tried to recruit. They would get plopped around. They buy shields. They take the troops off their wall to conserve the troops. But once or twice, every other week, they're getting burned for resources, which isn't going to create a lot of unity on the server. So fast forward to season 2, things are getting better. They're starting to understand there needs to be more server unity. LNL isn't burning as much, and they come together, and they have a pretty good season 2 at that point. Migration now hits, and unfortunately, I think when these things occur, you end up with animosity that the bridges are burned, and you're just looking for a way out, regardless of how the last season went. Too much bad history. They look for a way out of 81. That brings Deathwolf to server 76, which goes a little bit better for him. And then he decides to move to server 93, where we pick up Deathwolf is currently. And this We take a look at his current alliance. That is third. He is no longer an R4. He is an R3, really by choice. He does a lot to help the alliance, but he doesn't want to be an R4 or R5 or seeking that at the moment. Then we jumped into some total hero power conversation where he is 150 million, sitting at 82nd in the server. We then find out that Deathwolf's been playing for 620 days. Squad conversations. His first squad was sitting at 52. Second squad is 40.78. And third squad was 38.52. Looking at his heroes, he has done a really good job at building his gear up. We went through a lot of his heroes to see he was 2 dots, 3 dots, across the board for a lot of his heroes, and had 8 mythics across his first team. He is about to go up to 3 on his DBA, and he was asking me DBA Shield, and he was asking me, he said he didn't want to go up to level 3 on multiple. He wanted to just only do 4. And I didn't understand why, going to only 3 was some reason looked down upon, and he didn't want to do it. So I explained to him, like, really 3 dots when you look at it. If you do the math, it says only 750 attack, and people think, oh, that's not a big deal, 750 attack. But actually, if you do the math, it ends up working out to about a 13% increase in attack power. And, when we looked at defense, when a defensive hero, the defense 3 dots will pick you up 300, I think it says, for defense. And if you did the math, that's 17% increase. So I said to him, if 3 dots for offense said a 13% increase in power, would you then look at that differently? And he said yes, he actually would look at it differently. So I think people need to start looking at the 3 dot thing a little bit different, because leaving your heroes at 3 dot is not a bad thing when you look at you're getting a 13% increase. It's difficult to only worry about going to 3 dots and 4 dots for a hero because it's 15 prints and 20 prints, which is 35 prints. So I'm not sure where the logic came that I can only upgrade my heroes when I have 35 prints, or I have to do a hero, a 3 and then a 4, and I can't just do a 3, because as we talked about in the Alliance store, you can get 40 prints per month, and that brought us to Deathwolf showing that the only thing he buys in the Honor store is the prints, which is incredibly smart, and we know that everything else is just eye candy. You should only be buying these prints. So really the logic, though, if you're only allowed to get 40 prints, you can still upgrade a hero. 15 and 15 would give you 3 dots and 3 dots, which would leave you 10 left, which would give you 2 dots on a hero, right? And so if you thought about the logic of either I can upgrade one hero and try to get them to 35 and say one hero would be 3 dots and 4 dots, instead, my entire team, I can upgrade somebody to 3 dots, another person to 3 dots, and then another person to 2 dots. I can make my team stronger all around month to month than just sitting there saying I'm only going to update one hero 15 and 20, and that's how I have to do it. So anyway, we talk about some logic there. I think he seemed to agree as well. I think looking at it again from the 13%, 17% is a lot different than looking at 750 and 300. Changes people's view on the gear. Otherwise, his gear was fantastic. Deathwolf then won 3-on-3 arena, where he won 3-0, and we got to look at his heroes. We took a look at his exclusives that he is building perfectly, spread 20 apiece. Loved that look. Then took an overall view of his gear. As I said, 8 exclusive pieces in 620 days. He's done a hard work in getting all the blueprints he could, and his gear was really filling out with all 4 stars. One comment that I did have was when he's building his defense, he's playing air. So my recommendation would be, when you have air, to build out your defense first. And that would be, as he's doing here, which is perfect. Then you can see that he puts chips on his defense. I would prefer that he put radar and shields on his offense as well in this regard. And one of the things we talked about was that one of the powerful weapons and skills in this game is Schuler's stun. So when you really get down to it, you want to build that skill out and you want to build up Schuler any chance you get. Because when you're fighting air and there's somebody that's stronger than you, let's say even a tank squad that's stronger than you, if you can stun them like 7 times, then you can win a battle with somebody way stronger than you. The skill is unreal, and you don't know when it's going to happen. You can't necessarily control it, but you want to up that defense because the longer that fight goes with air, the better chance you have to stun. So I always recommend get that defense going. You do have to have offense, obviously, so when you do have a chance to hit, you do hit. So I love that he built the mythics on his offensive heroes, but I also just wanted to comment that I would rather have the shields and radar on air than putting the chips on my defensive hero. Deathwolf did a nice job with his skills at this point, maxing out all his heroes on his first team. Touched on the good job he did with his drone, getting it to 150. Also, his chips, he's evened out 5 stars apiece, which is important because they all will gain additional abilities at 5 stars. So that looked good as well. Took us into components, where you can see he's built out very nice with 9 and almost to his bottom 3. He has to level 9 as well. Slow roll, but as a mid spender, this looks really, really good. Got into the rest of the report, which was the tech center. He's doing a nice job in building out his tech, his mastery. I did recommend continuing to work out on that defense and siege, but that looks good as well. And then we saw some deco we'll visit later on, and then we jumped into his tech tree. We both shared how we have a little OCD where we're updating things to 100% when they probably don't need to be. There's things in Siege that don't need it, like movement and things in the truck. He was 100%, and that got me to say and give a warning that the plunder rule for the truck, you don't want to upgrade that to 100%. On the bottom left, it costs 20,000 Valor to limit somebody from hitting you 3 times. Now, when you look at your overall plunder reports, who's hitting you more than 3 times that isn't beating you? I mean, honestly, if somebody's going to hit you, once, they're probably beating you the majority of the time. Let's talk about like 90% of the time, 95% of the time. If you have a couple hits here and there, then that next person's probably going to clear you. The bottom line is using 20,000 Valor, which we talked about, 10,000 Valor in the events probably costs around $400, $300 to obtain. So by doing that, you're giving away like $800, $600 to update for something that you already don't need. Then looked at the siege, which I said he was doing an excellent job with siege and defense and building those within his tech. You need to continue. One of the things in there he wasn't looking at was training and upgraded training. He was only 3 out of 10. And I explained, for anybody in this game, the training and hospital are the 2 resources and things we use really the most. So if we could build those out from a tech perspective, I highly recommend us focusing on training and building up. There are many different places in the tech store where you can do this, and make sure you're maximizing those any chance you get because you use them so often. And then we took a look at his barracks and how many troops his barracks can hold. Ended up, as we went through each one individually, he can train around 3,000 at a time. So as you can imagine, upgrading them by 10% here and 10% there, it really allows you to get almost a half a barracks back when you go through all the tech center opportunities for training troop. It was crazy to then look at his Valor that he had stored up, which is 145,000 Valor medals that weren't being used. Explain that he just doesn't have the speed ups or the gold in order to use these. So gold was his primary problem, and he didn't know how to get it. But when you think about it, that I just said 10,000 Valor is like $300 in the store, $400 in the store, and he's sitting on, like $5,000 worth of Valor, and he can't use it. So how do we actually get the actual gold to use it? Now, mobilization event was one of the things I talked about, because if you're buying for that the $100 pack for a mid spender like him, you're going to get RSS chests of 40, 60, or 100 when you do the $100 pack. So that's one way you can obtain RSS in a fast way. That's one of the ways I used it. So you might want to budget your way for that. But to sit on this much Valor is all power that could be used. We then got into how he doesn't have problems with resources because he has a lot of food and iron. He just didn't have gold. So that would be one way to really direct using the mobilization RSS chest to bulk get some chests for him to use some of that Valor, because if he could turn that Valor into 100%ing his mastery, he could 100% probably his, take all the power out of his siege and all the power out of his defense, and really his tech would look phenomenal. Dove into the decorations, and he's trying to get everything up to level 3. That's what he's focused on. The best way to do this, we agreed upon, was through the event, where deco is actually 5K offered in the event. The deco that is in the Alliance store that we featured here is 5K for 50, or I'm sorry, 5,000 gems for 50 deco, and that just doesn't seem worth it. So really the event store is the best place to build out these things. When you get like October, it's coming, there's going to be a big event, and you can get 5K deco for your tickets. For a mid spender like Deathwolf, he's saving for that, and he knows that'll be a place to push some of his deco. He also asked me if I think that the deco that they release during the events is worth it when they come out with a brand new deco piece. And I explained, for somebody of a mid spender level, yes, I think that it's worth it to buy the initial, but not the extra $100 or $200 to push it to level 3. You can just get it. In the event store where they have these events like in October, people often looking at the skins. Although the effects are 5%, the stock effects are pretty good. Compared to the 5K deco, it may not look as good, but I'm telling you, it's way more value to go after the 5K deco, where you can spread that out, than trying to get a skin. Like in the events in the season store, as he showed, he hasn't bought any of the skins because he uses them on Mythic, and that's incredibly smart. It's harder for him as a mid spender, especially if you're a low spender, to come up with Mythic prints. So if you have the opportunity in a season store, although you might not have another skin, it's not smart to use those season store points on a skin when you can actually go on and take it for a Mythic prints. We started to wrap up the conversation with the Gorilla, where we showed that the top skills for the Gorilla, being the Roar and the Shield, or the armor, can actually be fantastic on the Gorilla, but you do have to upgrade it to level 6 and level 7 to see those stars get filled in and get the extra % bonuses. However, the shards are difficult to come by, so it's not something that we prioritize. So then we started talking, what do we prioritize? And we both agreed that gear and exclusives and tech and drone are better to prioritize than the Gorilla. Although we will say that the Gorilla does, as it gets stronger, when you're in battle, it makes a battle last longer, and it absorbs a lot of punishment. And when it can do that, it goes back to the first point we made about air, where it can make the battle last longer. And if you can make the battle last longer, Schuler can use her stun, and therefore, in air, it's even better than most of the other squads to have your Gorilla built out. So if you can't get the shards, then what's the best way to look at building the Gorilla? And one of the things I pointed at was the bond badges are really overlooked because people can't get them. They're only 10 for in the weekly store for $50. So it outprices a lot of people, like free to play, low spender, even mid spenders start forgetting about getting these, and you acquire them during the week. but people can't build this fast enough in regards to reliable the partners and going through them. And if you look at the bottom statistics, it's all for overlord statistics, which continues to increase. Mine is at around 40% now of the damage reduction, and the overlord stats are at 25%, 26% overall. So it's really something that's overlooked. But in the Bounty Hunter store, they gave an opportunity of a place to buy 50 badges now. So even if you're free to play or a low spender or a mid spender, and you want to just save those bounty bullets to get those bond badges, is a great way to build the gorilla. Special training is what people focus on because the game gives you these things. But the problem is, it's not addressing the real fact of keeping your gorilla alive during battle. And that's what most people say. My gorilla will not stay alive. That's going to be done through the bond rating. And you want to increase that. Special training is going to help all your heroes. But again, is it your heroes you're worried about, or is it the actual gorilla staying alive? So let's address what the concern is, and that is actually raising your rating. Perfect sync or somewhere along there. I just want to be clear, our conversation wasn't to upgrade the gorilla because other things are priority, but it was more, if you are, this is an opportunity to upgrade it into perfect sync, or bonded partner is probably more realistic. Wrapped up our conversation talking about packages and the money difference between US and I believe he was in Australia, where he said the $5 packs are actually $8. So when you're recommending for somebody on what to buy, you have to understand that there's $5 packs are actually $8. I think he said Great Britain was even more money. That brings us to figure out, like, how much are these packs and what does it mean to other countries, where, when we say something's a value, it might not be a value. If a $5 pack costs you $100, would you then say that $5 pack was a value? I'm being extreme, but I'm just saying that the money does make a difference when you talk about a coffee versus a dinner. So we need to understand, like, what the difference is on some of these countries, if it's actually $5 or $10 or whatever it is. So I wanted to thank Deathwolf for coming in. Couple things that we touched on, where he was playing the game for 620 days, probably spent around $3,500. When we worked it out for the time he's playing, probably around $5 a day, which was the price of a coffee. So the value of playing for Deathwolf, even for a mid spender, has been pretty good overall for the game. We also just wanted to say that it's cheaper to buy an account for that $3,500, where he may only get, like, it's $500 or $600 for those that actually buy accounts. You would miss everything in a season, and we discussed, like, all the stuff that happens early on, season 1 through 4, and all those things. So really, buying an account is better financially, but if you're doing this for entertainment, you miss out on an awful lot. I know that was an hour and a half summed up into 20 minutes. It doesn't necessarily do it justice for talking to Deathwolf, but it was a pretty good summary, I think. It was an honor to have Deathwolf in and talk to him, meet him. I look forward to jumping in and having conversations with him in the WWC community. If you see him, his name's a little different, so it's Valkyrie in Discord, and on YouTube is Ubrian, I think, or Umbrian on YouTube when you see him leaving comments. Either way, I look forward to having more conversations with the WWC community. I can assure you the audio will continue to be worked on and fixed as we move forward. Thank you for taking the time. You could be anywhere with that 20 minutes and you spent it here. I truly appreciate it. Please join us in the Discord community, where we're building up this thing brick by brick. Thank you for subscribing, leaving comments. And with that, QB18 out.